What's up, everybody? It's your favorite Decepticon Misfits, favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Unique Toys Bruticus. Before we do, I wanted to give you the opportunity to look at them together. I don't know, man. It really seems to me like this is a mixed, matched set. I'm not sure what the angle was here. I don't think I get it. I don't think I like it. It really ends up falling short of expectations, especially after that swindle. But you can see the sort of evolution from this to this to this to these. Like, this is obviously the closest representation. This swindle in particular doesn't look like it belongs to the same set as the rest of these guys. And I can't tell which of these two seem the most off in terms of the most of another set. So I'm not sure. I like the face sculpts on all 5 of them across the board. I think that does go a long way. Just a really disappointing kind of team. But that doesn't mean that they'll look bad combined. So let's get to it. To connect Swindle, do yourself a favor and start by plugging these 2 pieces into these 2 tabs here. Then bringing Onslaught up and around and plugging into the Swindle. Plug Onslaught's tab into the back of Brawn. And then Onslaught into Brawn. And for some reason I thought I was recording and I wasn't. When you go to connect the arms, make sure that you have the key lined up. It has 2 pegs on each side, so it usually means putting it in sideways and then turning it around properly. Before we continue, there are 2 different configurations for this. There's one with the thighs extended all the way up, which is the one that we're going to be looking at, because it's not fair to compare the smaller version to some of the stuff we're going to talk about later in the conversation. So we're going to have the extended version for the sake of size, because contrary to what you lads have told yourself, size does matter. But this is the extended, and we're going to be looking at that in depth. So I want to show you the collapsed version, which is just this push down, and then we'll take a look at it as that kind of looks first. Now, there it is collapsed, and size-wise, it comes in at about 17 3/4 inches. So as you'll see later on when we do the extended, it's still a bit small for what most of us are looking for our masterpiece collections, I think. So we're not going to go much further into this. However, I must admit that this does help 2 things. The proportions are better with thicker thighs, when you don't have that smaller thigh at the top. 100% agree. But comparatively, the size looks silly next to a lot of other bots. To me, that's subjective, of course. The second thing that it helps is, as I'll begin to show you in the articulation with it extended, Onslaught's knee bend becomes a problem with the stability of the figure. There are a few stability factors, but for the most part, this guy's pretty solid. I'm talking 95%. So any complaint I have from here on out, we're talking about the 5% making it rock solid. But I must agree, I like this look a lot better than the look we're going to be looking at for the rest of the review, but I don't like this size at all. So I think I'm willing to accept the shortcomings from the extended thighs in order to give it a leg up, so to speak, on the competition for the rest of the review. Because at this size, I just can't recommend it for a masterpiece scaled Bruticus. All right, so we still had to build his gun. Now I already put in brawns or brawls because the connection is really tight and it's kind of a pain to do. So we can connect this one, and then we can put that onto there. And if I were honest with you, I'd probably leave it like that. Maybe put this one in, maybe even down here. I don't know. It gets to a point where it gets too ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I would even take this off, put this there, and that to me is fine. And maybe that's even a bit overstated. Maybe I would remove this if it were up to me. And then I think these 2 go here on the side. But, you know, these aren't the best, as we've... well, you guys don't know yet, but these are really loose. But, yeah, I think that's it. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, it's going to do for today. And there it is combined. And the one thing I'll give it is it's fairly solid. Now we're going to talk about articulation and stuff, and we're going to go piece by piece, and we'll talk about the alternate chest plate here in a bit, okay? Starting off at the head, we do get the details, the silver details on the side. The eyes are a little lifeless, just looking like this. And the head is on a hinge swivel. The neck plate does have a tendency to unpeg. But you get down a little bit, up a fair bit, which isn't going to help you much, because more often than not, you're probably going to have him looking down, and then the side-to-side motion, which is fine. For his left arm, you get the ratchet. The tail does get in the way of his face, obviously, but you can get the arm up to there. and it stays with no problem. There's also an additional ratchet inside of the connector port, obviously where it hinges, that can get the arm just to there. So using both, you shouldn't have any problem really getting what you need. The only issue is this tail of the helicopter. And then you get a ratchet moving it around as well that does hold. It puts a little bit of weight on this universal joint here, but it does hold. But you see, like, it should sit there, and it flops down a bit, but not a big deal in the great scheme of things. For the blast off shoulder, same thing. You get the two hinges working in concert. You can get the arm all the way up. It does go in front of the face, but you do have it. And then you also get the 360 motion as well. You get the elbow, that gets you 90 degrees. You don't get a bicep swivel, much like blast off. You get a swivel below the elbow, which doesn't give you anything, especially if you have a wrist swivel. It's just a redundant joint. You do get the fingers, and they are articulated. We'll talk about them when we get to blast off. You don't get the bicep swivel, as we've already discussed. You get a wrist swivel basically at the bottom of the elbow. The elbow does get you up to 90 degrees. Let's take this off so we can see it. So no issue there. And then the wrist swivels, no hinge obviously. The thumb is on a ball peg, and then we have two additional hinges, and then each finger is individually articulated. The base knuckles on a ball peg, and then two additional hinges. They all work fine. And then we have some details and stuff on the hand. Waist swivel, no problem. The thighs are universals. They work in a different way though. You can move the hip skirts out of the way and get the universal joint here. But the ratchet doesn't hold it, but it doesn't need to hold it straight out to be effective. It just needs to hold it for posing. You're not gonna have him standing on one leg. And then you can bend the leg, but you do lose it there above the knee. Speaking of the knee, where the knee joint is actually supposed to work, if you get this out of the way, you can get 90 degrees and then you just have to put that back. But for pictures or posing and stuff, that should be fine. And that holds perfectly. The swindle thigh joint holds a lot better to the outside, holds fine forward and back as well. You get the full range forward and back. But the weight does pull at the onslaught knee, not at the proper knee. Once again, if you move this back plate, will get you just about 90 degrees. For the feet, you don't get any ankle tilt. You do get a toe tilt, but you do get a pretty solid ankle rocker. Not an extreme range, but a range good enough for any display. And from the back, I must admit, pretty clean. And then you can do the alternate chest swap. I'll show you how to do this in blast off. You should be able to figure out on your own. But you can take Vortex's sort of side pieces here and plug them into this. But the connection, once again, sucks. So it'll probably ruin it. But like, they're supposed to plug into there. I'll do it off camera, but a lot of these connections are problematic throughout this process. Now I hear there's stuff you can do with this and take all this apart and throw it on different places on the Bruticus. That doesn't do anything for me. I don't know how to do it. I don't even know if I've seen it. I heard it's possible. If it's something that you're interested in, I'm sure you can find it out. You're a smart lad. Then you can apply this middle piece of the chest armor into the abdomen and then apply your new chest shield by plugging it into the same connection spaces. I'm not going to put that back in. It's too much of a pain. But you get the idea. It's not the connection points between the combiner ports, mind you. It's the connection points between tabs and slots and ports and pegs and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's an issue that kind of plagues this set throughout. But you get the idea. Size comparison wise, there it is with the XTB Stunticon and the Warbitron Bruticus. So pretty significant size difference. The top of Warbitron's head comes up to about where the cockpit is on the shield, the top of the cockpit on the shield of the Unique Toys one. And there he is with Toy World Debbie. And that's why I'm going with Zeta for Bruticus. And I will tell you, having just moved Debbie over here, even though this Unique Toys Bruticus is very solid, this is a bit more solid. But this Unique Toys is very solid, don't get me wrong. We'll get to that in final thoughts, but I just like the proportions better. But size-wise, the Unique Toys is about a head shorter than the Toy World. So I would assume it's going to be a head shorter than the Zeta because reasons. Now, if you bring this off the ground to about where that foot is going to be, Bruticus might even be taller than Devastator. But it's just I don't know. I mean, it's a matter of preference, and I get that, but to me, it's just a different ball game. Final thoughts wise, here are my negatives. I do have some proportion issues with this type of combiner with how small the thighs end up looking in relationship to the rest of the bot. There's also some joints that you wish would hold up a little bit better than they actually do. Now I say that to say this is an incredibly sturdy combiner. I want to stress that. It is very sturdy. However, it doesn't mean it's not without shaking. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's very sturdy. There's no doubt about it. But as you can see, there is like some wobble. Like, I don't know how to explain it. There's some issues there, and they're mainly due to the number of joints that are in the thighs and hips that end up giving him a bit more wobble than you would want. But the wobble is very minimal. I just want to point out that it is there. My other big issue that's much more critical for this guy is the lack of bicep swivel. You're gonna have a hard time getting him to hold his gun across his body because the arm doesn't move that way, which is a real bummer. That's the biggest drawback of this fella. I want to just double check what I'm talking about. Like, there's a small smidgen of one, couple degrees maybe, but not enough to really get the job done. And that is a joint that you do end up needing. There is a swivel below the elbow, but that doesn't accomplish what you want it to accomplish. For instance, I'll move the camera just to kind of better illustrate. If I wanted him to have his hand turned around the other way, this hand to be holding his gun across his body with this hand supporting it. When I get this hand up, there's no way to move the arm across the body from the upper perspective to get it, I'm moving the whole figure there, to get it to hold. And that is an issue. Like, that's a problem. You're gonna have problems with that in terms of how you display the figure, especially when you're using the gun. My sturdiness is a nitpick, and it doesn't bother me. I just want to point it out for you before you get it so you know. The bicep swivel is not a nitpick. The bicep swivel is an issue. Plenty more positives though to boot. It is very sturdy. It's not rock solid, but it's probably the second most sturdy combiner that I've looked at, with the first being Toy World Devi. The articulation works across the board with the exception of the bicep swivel, and to be fair, I'm pretty sure the engineering for the bicep swivel is there. It just butts up against the backpacks of both the rocket ship and the helicopter where it doesn't allow it to move. That's why you get that 5 degrees or whatever. It has a strong presence. The materials feel pretty good. The likeness is there. It cleans up extremely well. So I think if you like the aesthetic of this and you like the size of this, you will be 100% happy with this. For me personally, I'm not 100% happy with the aesthetic, definitely not happy with the size. We'll find out how I feel about some of these bot modes here shortly. But it's a very interesting release overall because I think the combiner mode is very successful, but the robot modes ended up kind of failing this conglomerate. But if you're in for Bruticus and you're okay with the size, and as a matter of fact, just to give you a measurement, it's about 18 3/4 inches. But he's also a bit sleeker than I would personally prefer. But that's subjective. So I just want you to have all the information you can possibly have before you make your decision. It does put together well, and it is very stable. Extremely solid. Not rock solid, but very solid. So it is a recommend from me ultimately at the end of the day. If you're into this for the combined mode, I think it's a little small for what a Masterpiece Bruticus should be. It'll probably look great with a chug, but I'd be lying to you if I said that this didn't leave me feeling a little bit empty across the board. The main problem that plagues this entire set are the tolerance issues. You don't really have that a whole lot in this combined mode. The only problems that you'll find are plugging in the thrusters from Vortex into the kind of chest piece of Blast Off, but the rest of it goes together really quite well. So if you're into it, I hope you enjoy it. If you're thinking about it, I hope I gave you enough information to make a choice. I'm probably gonna buy these arms just so I can compare. I'm at least gonna buy the Vortex, but we'll talk about that in the Vortex video. But at least so I can compare this to the Zeta once the Zeta is done. Very interesting course of events throughout this Unique Toys release. I'd like to thank Titan one more time, who I bought 3 of these pieces from, and we'll have to buy the 4th and might buy the 5th, but they've been very good to me. The link to their store will be in the description. If you're thinking about buying it, I highly suggest you get it from them. Great customer service and great people. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.